Welcome! In this video we'll be taking a quick look at Reina, a epic grade debuffer class Elune. Looking at her base stats, at 6-star level 60 she has a decent HP at 23.2k, her attacks at 4.6k, and her physical and magic defense are at a decent 3k apiece. Her attack speed at 112 puts her on the faster side, making her very good for getting that turn 1 opportunity in PvP or PvP. Getting her up to the max at plus 5 Transcendence, she goes up to a very decent 34.8k HP with a almost 7k attack and a 4.5k physical and magic defense. This makes it somewhat easier to make her tankier, as well as making her fast with the high base speed. Looking in at her skills, on her first skill, it is a basic magic damage skill that does 100 plus 95% of her attack as magic damage. As the skill is leveled up to the max at plus 6, it goes up to 900 plus 130% of her attack as magic defense. This is a basic magic attack skill that attacks frontline enemies only. Looking at her special skill, which is one of her best skills that she has, this skill does not do any damage. Instead, this applies a weakening effect that reduces the attack speed of the enemy by 20% at level 1 for 2 turns. It then gives her a 75% chance of causing a spell effect that causes restrain for 2 turns, making the enemy unable to use skills. This, as it's leveled up to the max at 6, it goes up to an attack speed reduction of 40% and a duration of 3 turns. This also increases the restrain effect for 3 turns. As the skill only takes 2 souls and does not do any damage, it is very good for sealing up those enemies, especially in some of the current meta where there's a lot of Artemils on the other team that will counter-attack for any attack. This skill, as it does not do damage, will not trigger the counter-attack by the judge passive from the Artemil, making this very easy to spam on the enemies to seal them up and stop them, including restraining the Artemil to make it so that he cannot counter-attack anymore if he is restrained. Looking into her ultimate skill is an AoE magic skill that does 120 plus 120% of attack as magic damage to all enemies. This one also has a 75% chance of inflicting a physical effect that stuns the enemies for 2 turns. This is a very good AoE stun. As this is leveled up to the max at plus 6, it goes up to a decent 940 plus 164% of her attack as magic damage to all enemies, and the stun effect goes up to 3 turns. Although this skill is not a spammable skill as it is her ultimate skill, she still has a good chance of stunning the enemies for 3 turns with this skill. So making sure that she has good accuracy is something that you're definitely going to want to do. Looking in at her first passive, when she is in the back row of a lineup, it increases the attack of all allies except for herself by 10% as long as she is alive. This means that she gives an attack buff to your team as a passive ability, making them hit harder overall as long as she's in the back row and is kept alive. Her second passive. When an attack lands as a crit, it will remove a random buff from the target and inflict a spell effect that causes Confuse for 2 turns. This means that having a decent crit rate on her, or a crit buff on her, or even a paralyze effect on the enemy to guarantee the crits is something that is worth having, as this will cause her to remove a buff. This also works in the cases of the AoE attack. It has a chance to remove a random buff off of everybody. This can also cause Confuse. Confuse is a very good spell effect as it causes the enemy to attack their allies and heal you. Her third passive. This one increases her crit rate by 10% for each debuff she has inflicted on all enemies on the battlefield. So as you go through and you start spamming her ultimate skill as many times as you can to get those AoE stuns off, and using her special skill, all the chances that you get, those will count. That's 2 debuffs on each of the special skill and 1 for the stun on the ultimate skill, with the potential of the passive landing the other effects as well. This makes her very good for increasing that crit rate, which makes it even more likely that she will cause the Confuse debuff and cause the Strip, making Reina a very good ally to have on the field, as she is very good at debuffing the enemy, and she has the ability to strip if she crits, as well as stun and CC. Looking in at her skill gem effects, her first skill has a 5% chance of reducing the target's magic defense by 10% for 2 turns. This skill is a very basic magic skill. Some options to do on this skill, since she has a really nice effect if she crits, is to go for a full crit set of gems instead of the recommended blue, blue, and orange for the increased magic damage, instead opting to go with the full orange, orange, orange set to increase the crit rate of this skill, making it so that it is more likely to crit, could be a viable option for her, so that she has a increased crit chance to strip and to land those confused debuffs. Her second skill, this one is the Indigo Violent, and has a 5% chance of reducing the target's max HP by 10% for 2 turns. As again, this is a low chance, just like the first skill. Going with the full Indigo set just increases the amount of that speed debuff that she puts on the enemy. As you want her to take as many turns as possible, having the Violet one on here to increase her speed after using this skill is not a bad option, as it will allow her to gain more turns. As for the last skill, the skill is an AoE damage skill, so the recommended is Blue, Orange, and Violet, giving her the speed, the crit rate, and the damage. This has a chance of restoring 1 soul by 10%, which is a very low amount, but it is there. Other options for this skill, if you want to use her as a stripper, would be to go with a full orange set of gems like the first skill, as it does damage, to give her that increased crit rate to make sure to help her land those crits, so that she can strip the enemies or put on the Confused debuff on them as an AoE. This is a very good option for her, as it allows her to be more useful. Looking at the dimension slate for her, things that you would want to focus on her: definitely accuracy, her physical, magic, and HP. Her physical, magic, defense, and her HP are worth getting on her to make her tankier, as sometimes she will be focused. Her attack speed is definitely something you want to do, because you want her to move very quickly in the battle so that she can get off those first turns CC abilities, which again makes accuracy very important to make sure that you can land those. Gear recommendations for her are anything basically you can get her to move fast. The Full Moon set, the 3-piece set, is a very good set because it does give her a 25% chance to inflict the debuffs. This is good as it does offset some of the accuracy dependency that she would need. Going with a full Moon set too is a viable option, as the full Moon set will also give her the ability to reflect debuffs. So if the enemy is trying to focus on her or hits her with AoE attacks that try to CC her, then she can reflect those debuffs back to them with a 50% chance. Other options that you have for her, going with the Debuffer set, the new debuff literature set, to have that also increase debuff inflict rate. Other options are anything that give her speed or her ability. Giving her an HP in her offhand slot does give her the higher survivability, but her attack isn't too bad for an epic, so going with an attack one also is not a bad option, as long as you can have decent stats on her in terms of physical, magic, defense, and HP to make her tanky. Focusing on speed for her is a very good thing to do, as you want her to move quickly in the battle so that she can get off those restraints right away. Reina is a very good option. For an Elune, she is a good debuffer both for PvP and for PvE, as that she is capable of restraining a target for 3 turns, as well as AoE stunning, even though with a 75% chance the skill for the restrain only takes 2 souls, meaning that it can be spammed quite often and you can pass a turn back to her to give her more chances if she doesn't land it. As the skill also does not do any damage, it is good against the current Artemil meta where you can just restrain the Artemil so he cannot counterattack anymore, and then you can have full reign on the rest of the team with whoever you would like. She is good for the PvP and PvE situations as she does have an AoE stun to deal with mobs, but the restrain is also useful for bosses for restraining them to stop them from getting those pesky turns. So it is something good for her and it is very nice to have. She is very good for CC, so she is useful in all situations, especially for completing some of the boss dailies where you need to use a debuffer, and you also want to CC the bosses that can be CC'd if you're doing up to the level 10 stages. This makes her very useful for those times for those dailies that you might encounter, as she is AA quite good at CCing the bosses to keep them restrained so that they can be dealt with. That's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll answer them as soon as I can. Thank you.